For all the talk about free speech by the right, the Trump administration's latest move to select who will cover the president has the press corps up in arms.
The White House announced Tuesday that the administration will make the determination regarding which news outlets have access to the president.
Breaking with the tradition of a rotating pool selected by the White House Correspondents Association, this is a way for the White House to clamp down on the message that gets out to the public. Trump's disdain for the press is, of course, no secret. He has been lambasting them since his first term with names such as lamestream press and enemies of the people.
I've used a few of those from time to time. Meanwhile, here is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt making this announcement.
As you all know, for decades, a group of D.C.-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well. As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the president's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast.
The White House Correspondents Association responded, writing, quote, "This move tears at the independence of a free press in the United States. It suggests the government will choose the journalists who cover the president. In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps."
Even Fox News did blast the move, or at least senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich did so. She wrote on X, "This move does not give the power back to the people. It gives power to the White House. The White House Correspondents Association is democratically elected by the full-time White House press corps." She added further, "If you think MAGA benefits from this in the long term, you're dead wrong. You would not have trusted in any Democratic administration to pick its own pool, but now that door is open. White House Correspondents Association has never opposed the White House administration to pick the pool, but picking it to contribute to the pool, but picking it is another story. Just wait till a Dem admin plays that same game. You'll hate it."
This move comes on the heels of the White House blocking access to the Associated Press because of its refusal to change, quote, Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America.
Some on the right, however, celebrated the move. Breaking Point's host, former Rising host Sagar Enjeti, wrote on X, "Excellent decision. The White House Correspondents Association assignments in the briefing room and gatekeeping in the press pool dramatically restrict access to irrelevant legacy media outlets and dramatically skew the type of questions to be asked in limited press availabilities with the president." And Greg Price, a White House rapid response writer, wrote on X, "This is easily the biggest shakeup of Washington, D.C. in a very long time. The fake and lame White House Correspondents Association has for decades controlled which reporters and outlets have access to the White House, despite no actual statutory authority to do so."
Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, wrote on X, "Having served as a Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign, this reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access."
So Jackie Heinrich of Fox News, who was complaining about this, is a member of the White House Correspondents Association. Look, in this case, I'm a little bit of two minds, because I certainly understand the criticism, the pushback here. If it's just the White House is picking who has access, they could just pick friendlier and friendlier media. I think if Democrats did this or Biden had done this, it would have been perceived as by Republicans, excuse me, I'm tripping over my words here, as an effort to limit access from people who might ask hostile questions of Biden. So I understand all that. That said, the White House Correspondents Association has long been criticized from the right, from independent media, for doing gatekeeping on behalf of legacy institutions. I agree with Sagar, who used to be the host of Rising, and how he frames it as this association really poorly serving the new media ecosystem, which involves podcasters and independent content creators and all of that. I like that Caroline Leavitt discussed throwing open the White House press briefing room to more of these kinds of outlets, and I supported that. I'm not sure how this is going to go. If the White House is just going to be picking more friendly blogger-type people, that would not be a good idea, but I'd like to wait and see how it actually works. I think breaking the power of the very cartel-like White House Correspondents Association is a fine thing on its own, although I don't know that this plan will be better.
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had about who gets access. And especially in this new media, that's aging me by saying that, right? This world of different content creators and the digital era we find ourselves in, where, you know, the latest research shows that most people actually are not watching cable news. They're not watching the major networks. They're getting their news from non-legacy media institutions. So, you know, put that on one side of it. I think, however, that Peter Baker really hit the nail on the head here. What we're seeing is this administration very specifically deciding that it is exacting revenge for outlets that it doesn't like. We saw that during the first administration, and I don't expect this one to be very different. And in this case, it is specifically attacking the Associated Press, for which there is a style book. It is literally a facts, nothing but the facts wire service. And I think that they're picking it in a way that I think is going to be harmful, by the way, to smaller communities in this country who actually rely on wire services like the Associated Press to bring them the news of the day.
So I think the retaliation against the Associated Press was wrong, as do numerous conservative outlets. Newsmax also came to the Associated Press's defense. They shouldn't have done that. That said, I have clashed many times with the AP in the past. I mean, it's not, some of their style guide stuff is clearly making editorial decisions that I am baffled by. Do you remember when they decided to start capitalizing black but not white in terms of ethnicity?
I remember that.
Oh, I remember.
I'm sure you had many segments about it.
Yes, I probably did a monologue on that. So, you know, do I think they should be retaliated against? No. The blending of conservative media and the White House is an issue because I think it's fine for conservative pundits to inveigh against the media. I inveigh against the media all the time. I don't think it's less appropriate for the president to do it. I mean, he can use his free speech rights to complain about the media. He should not actually take action against them or use the power of government to undermine them. But, you know, the White House does get to pick which reporters it wants to give access to, right? They don't, that is a power they're allowed to have. We can criticize who they give access to. We can say, well, that's, you know, not being in the spirit of a free press, which I'm sure will be the case sometimes, but they get to do it.
The White House gets to decide if it's going to give a one-on-one interview to an outlet. The White House does not get to decide, I'm going to send my media alerts or my news releases only to a subset of the press. I mean, that is exactly
the Biden White House decided never to let anyone talk to Biden ever because we're hiding the fact that he is too senile to be the president. So
President Biden did not cherry pick who was sitting in the front row of his press briefing room when he was there taking questions. And I think that's ultimately the thing that is, you know, at issue here, right? I think that there is a very real role for legacy media institutions to do the pushing to make sure that the administration is transparent, to make sure that there is some accountability, and that when 2 + 2 is added up, it actually equals 4.
But did they do that job to the satisfaction of the American people when, yes, they do it when Trump is in power because they're hostile to Trump, but were they doing it when Biden was in power? You know, there's still a lot of, this is going to be an ongoing thing perhaps for years, the distrust of it, by the American people of legacy media outlets that failed to really press the administration on, for instance, Biden's physical and mental state. Now looks very like they had blinders on, like they did not. They're gatekeeping because they're occupying the Correspondents Association, deciding who's at the front of the room, who's getting access, and then they are failing in their job to properly to vet the president as aggressively as was called for in that situation. So that's why there's a desire to say, well, let's open it up to more voices. Now, if that just means the White House ends up closing it down to legacy media, I will, of course, be against that. But I think legacy media came off looking quite biased to people.
Well, I remember the Biden era differently than you do, not surprisingly, Robby. And I recall many criticisms about lack of access to the Biden front office there during the last 4 years. So it was a little bit different in my memory.
All right. Next up, Doge is hitting one group particularly hard. We'll discuss. Stay tuned.